Hi, and thank you for joining us today on the Road to Recovery. I'm Ronda Jackson, your host, serial entrepreneur and small business advocate. And today's guest, Miss Tyneka Howard, CEO of H2G Leadership Group, is joining us today. Welcome, Tyneka.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So today, folks, I don't know what you have planned for your new year, but you should not start it without listening to this conversation. Tyneka, for H2G. Okay, I'll do this one more again.
You have to laugh about it.
I am laughing on the inside. No. Okay. Record in 3, 2, and 1. Hi, and thank you for joining us today on the Road to Recovery. I'm Ronda Jackson, your host, serial entrepreneur and small business advocate. And today, joining us today is Miss Tyneka Howard. Hello, Tyneka, and thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Tyneka is the CEO of H2G Leadership Group. And for those of us that aren't as familiar, will you share a little bit more about you and the company?
Yeah, my company H2G Leadership Group helps people find their communication style. Then we take that unique combination and we help you to blend and integrate in with your communities and your build better relationships and business ventures.
I love that. And that is so going to be needed just from our pre-talks about the look ahead for 2021. So you're about to lay down some skill set, a knowledge base, and a point of reference for all of the emerging and established entrepreneurs that are joining us today. So if you haven't already, click that little red button below where you'll find the subscribe button and also more information about Tyneka and the H2G Leadership Group. Thank you, Tyneka. Well, you know, one of the ways that I like to start the show is I like to ask the guest for one word that they would use to describe now. What would be your word?
Ooh, I think now is aware.
Aware? Oh, say more.
Aware. 2020 made us aware of ourselves. And for some of us, it was a complete eye opener as far as our awareness, because we found out really we didn't know ourselves, we didn't understand our businesses, and we didn't understand how to grow either of them. So I think aware is the best word that describes.
I like where you're going with that. And I think that what's going to revolve or come out of this conversation is now what to do with that awareness, right? Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you had talked about when we talked about kind of the discovery session on aligning yourself with whatever that new trajectory looks like for the emerging and established entrepreneurs is sort of an evaluation. Can you talk about that for a second? Can you share with us where would we start on that evaluating process?
Yeah, a lot of my clients, when they contact me, I ask them, I say, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
And that's really that evaluation piece. If you're able to articulate who you are and what it is that you're doing in the here and now, then you might be onto something and I can help you refine that a little bit. But if you completely just are like, I don't know, then guess what? You need me.
Oh, I see.
And I love to help you because that's the biggest thing is the awareness piece and that evaluation. So then we start to move into more towards the assessment based, where you take a short quiz with online, and then we're able to look at some charts and graphs, and we're able to come through and do some discovery about yourself.
So I think either way, if we figure out that we don't know who we are, right? Or I find even myself kind of redefining who I am, right? And more in response to everything we've been to in 2020. Is that conversation any different? Or does that assessment is the question, who am I or who was I? And do I need to transition between both questions?
Yeah, I think you mentioned about the transition.
Yes.
So where you were 5 years ago could be totally different from where you are right now. Mm-hmm. So I think that at certain points in your life, you definitely need to reevaluate. As a 20-year veteran, I was able to. You asked me 5 years ago, what my communication style was and how was I communicating with people. And then you fast forward to 2020 and to 2021. Well, guess what? That language is a little bit different, because talking to troops and military members is totally different from talking to civilians, business owners, entrepreneurs, and just community leaders. So it changed. So as just like you said, you have to reassess. And the reassessment, the reevaluation piece is very important for you as a person.
Okay. And first, before I say anything else, thank you for your 20 years of service. I appreciate you supporting and allowing me to do what we do here. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so then we've had our internal discovery session, or we've picked up the phone and allowed you to help us through that process and that thinking to lay that framework out. Then if we were to look at what to do with that definition of ourselves, what would be the next step in that process or on this journey?
The next step would be to integrate.
Okay.
How are we able to integrate our language with the language of others? Because once you know yourself, now that's the second part, is now we make you aware of how to tap into that unique language and communicate with others.
Okay.
And because sometimes we think that, oh, I'm speaking to people. I speak to millions of people. I speak to millions of people all the time. Well, did you communicate? Because communication is definitely two-way, because the person on the other end, they need to receive the message, and they need to be able to process that message. So you have to be able to take that evaluated data, which is our discovery, and integrate it into your relationships with others in your day-to-day walk. Right. And I show you how to do that, because you need to understand how others communicate as well.
Okay, so this sounds a little bit beyond emotional intelligence, because there seems to be an acknowledgement that this person A may feel or receive this a certain way. But what I hear you saying is that the communication style, the person will not only receive it, but understand it and be able to create action behind it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Absolutely. If I said one phrase and I had 5 people in a room, I guarantee you that message could be received 4 or 5 different ways.
Oh, wow.
Everybody communicates a little bit differently. So if I say a phrase, that was very much key for me during my military career, was being able to articulate the message in a couple of different ways, because of the fact that we need to go execute. And you hit the nail on the head. It's the action piece. Okay. So if I say we need to go left, well, someone's communication style, they may have said, did she mean we could go left? Oh. That means that there's a choice in the matter. Oh. Well, do you mean if we're going left, are we going more of this way left, or is it your left, or is it my left? Different communication styles. Yes. So again, you have to be able to articulate that message in a couple of different ways in a split second, because you need to understand the audience.
So share with us how just these first 2 steps, right? The evaluation and the integration of our language and our communication styles sets our path for the new year. So this show is Road to Recovery. We are a little ways away from what that looks like. So how does just this conversation set and lay that path for us?
So once you understand yourself, once you're able to integrate and articulate that message to multiple people, well, guess what? The next thing is you got to expand, which means the collaborative efforts. Okay. Because it's easy to do it by yourself, but you need the team. If you had a team of people, you can go a lot further in that. So I love the fact that once you understand yourself, you're able to articulate that message, then guess what? You're able to expand. People will actually flock to you because of the fact that you're able to communicate things in ways that they absolutely have not tapped into. Leaders should understand that once you're able to expand that, you can build multiple teams. And be able to grow your brand as well as other brands.
And I hear you also saying that I'll be able to, or we as entrepreneurs will be able to grow other leaders, which
Oh,
is a
absolutely.
whole, yeah, which is a whole nother trajectory for the expansion that you're referring to. You actually laid down another little nugget, and I'm trying to process it in my brain in the form of a question. So give me 1 second. But you touched on the conversation with the other person, and we talked about receivership, but there's also I'm going to use the word trauma because I can't think of another word for 2020 right now, but to level set that conversation and understand where the person that you're dialoguing with and what they've been through. You know, there's been lost lives, there's been lost loves, there's been strain on marriages and homeschooling, and, you know, not just turning on the TV set, just within those four walls. So is there a way to adjust our communication style to actually sympathize or empathize, or just help that person know that you're not talking above them and you're not, you know, oblivious to what's happened in the world? How do you differ your communication style for that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because in learning the key communication styles, you're going to understand that certain people want to be spoken to a certain way.
Okay.
So as a leader, if I have people that typically, because 2020 taught us that things shut down, things were shut down for a bit because we didn't understand the pivot, because we were used to going into the office. We were used to sitting at the boardroom table and having those conversations, and we were able to have collaborative meetings and that type of thing. Well, 2020 taught us that we had to figure out what's the alternative. So just like me and you, we're having this online virtual conversation. Leaders had to figure out how to do that. Now, in communication, like, I can feed off your energy in the space. If we were in the boardroom, I can feed off your energy, and I can have that. Hey, Rhonda, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How was your kids doing? Or whatever the case. Well, virtually, we were all like exhausted all the time. So we didn't always understand how to virtually take what we were doing in person and do it virtually. So the same way I would walk into a room and I would greet you, hi Rhonda, how are you doing? How are the kids doing? How is the homeschooling going? How is everything else going? How is your family doing? We had to learn how to shift that virtually. So we had to take that couple of extra minutes because people still wanted to be communicated in that way. So that relationship wasn't frayed.
Okay.
And certain when you're in a meeting with your CEO or whatever the case, they want all the data, they want the points, they don't want to stay online very long. So you have to understand how my leader wants to be communicated with. They don't necessarily, you don't need to know how their family is doing, but you definitely want to get to the point. So it's vice versa. Again, conversation goes two ways. So that leader needs to understand that their employees or the folks that they're dealing with, they want to be spoken to a certain way. And the folks on the other end, they need to understand the leader needs that information as well. So it just all is understanding.
Right. But I like the conversation because I think that that's something that, to your point about whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, is that's something, a skill set that we've all had to improve, right? Because you don't have the true body language. You can't get that, you don't hear those little grunts and when people are muted or their cameras are off to even read facial expressions. So there's a lot more questions and dissecting and due diligence that's required to still maintain that, you used it earlier, the collaboration or that collectiveness on the team and the message. So I really appreciate that. So I want to make 2021 actionable and proactive for anyone within the sound of your and my voice. What would be one call to action? What would be one thing that you would recommend any person that's listened to this segment to do today, like before the end of the year or as we move into the beginning of 2021?
As we move into 2021, call to action today is really one thing. Call me. That's what.
Well, honestly, no. So that is a beautiful point. You mentioned earlier about, and I love this proverb, and if you listen to other episodes, I say this all the time. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And there are a couple of other episodes where experts have come on and recommended building and having that team. So having a communication strategist on your team would be huge. I think the one word, and I'd love for you to kind of elaborate on this. In one of our pre-conversations, you used the word transparency. So if you could share with the viewers just a little bit about that element of transparency as a leader, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, 2020 taught us that we were all in it together. Everybody went through the pandemic together. We all were on quarantine together. We were all trying to figure out and establish who we were and where we were as families, as communities, as business, all trying to figure that out at the same time. So as leaders, we were not exempt
Right.
from what was going on. So I think as leaders, I think some missed the mark in the transparency piece because it wasn't about the bottom line. It was about the care and feeding of our employees and about the people around us and about their emotions at the time. We were all scared. There was a lot of unknowns. There were a lot of variables. We were afraid to go to the store at times because of the fact that we didn't know what this virus was going to do. And so we had to, sometimes you have to meet your employees right where they are in that transparency piece. Hey, I'm doing the same thing. I have small children in school. I have the same worries and concerns. I understand that the business is a factor, but guess what? The business brought us together. So we're going to get through this together. Because a lot of us, we're not biological family members, but when you work together or you're doing business with someone or you're collaborating on a project, we're family. Yeah. So you have to understand, hey, let's drop the business right now for a second. Let's put that on pause and let's really understand who we are and what you're dealing with. So then we can come back to the business.
No, I love that. So then let's make this actionable. If someone is interested and would like more guidance and more direction on communication styles, setting out plans for their teams, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yes, people can connect with me on my website at H2G Leadher.net, or they can follow me on all social media platforms at Leadher10.
Okay, and we'll definitely have that in the description box below. You know where to find it, right below that little subscribe button. And thank you again, Tyneka, for joining us today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I love the hope and the inspiration and just the transparency of conversation and the understanding it would help with.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, for having me.